you have an employee who would discharge their weapon after a perceived threat, I would argue that the city's exposure is much more significant because you as an employer have the right to control that employee's conduct.
Well, I just wanted, I guess, a little bit more clarification, or make sure I understood correctly, the way you explained it earlier with federal and how that comes in. So really, the exemptions within the state, within HB 2052, do they really offer much of a level of protection at all, or are there still very many avenues that someone with a strong legal team could go? If someone were to come in, open fire in City Hall tomorrow, and one of the employees choose to sue, or any other, I mean, whatever scenario it might be, there's still avenues for them to pursue litigation if we were to just follow the exact way that 2052 is written right now. Is that the way I understood it?
That's correct.
Okay.
You know, I will tell you, because I defend these cases, that the state law claims aren't what I'm scared of in this context. It's the federal claims, because they are uncapped. You know, the state claims are capped at $500,000, and under the Kansas Tort Claims Act, there are so many exclusions from liability that a municipal lawyer has to work with that that tort claims under state statutes and state laws are very difficult for plaintiffs to pursue, which results most frequently in they may file the state claims, but they're really going to actively pursue the federal claims.
Okay. Steve, you had a question?
Yeah. We understand the focus is on City Hall and the government agencies in this building. There are other buildings within this municipality that are covered under 2052. You've got the sheds over here. Any place that has public and private ingress, egress that are enclosed spaces are included within this statute. So what you're saying is that we would take those signs down from those buildings and allow concealed carry in those buildings and pursue an exemption only for City Hall?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now the other question I've got is, it's a 4-year exemption. And we're talking about the first couple of years of expenditure, but after 4 years, it's kicking the can down the road. After 4 years, you have to show that you have security measures in place, not a security plan, adequate security measures in place, which includes, and the statute very clearly states, and you had said it before, metal detectors, metal detecting wands, and or full-time staff at the doors. You know, I'm assuming they would be armed to be able to manage those entrances. Am I not correct in that?
Yeah, I would have to say you're correct, because we're not really solving the problem per se immediately. It is getting an extension down the road. Now, I will let you know, I think again, most of my counterparts I talk to, my peers that I talk to, are hoping at some point the state comes around through another legislative action or whatever and addresses this and kind of cleans it up for us, so we have a better understanding and idea about what we can, cannot do, how we will proceed with it. But you're correct, it doesn't solve it.
Correct. Thanks.
Right, I've got one more question. It's really just kind of an A or B. So, from a city exposure standpoint of what we would be exposed to from liability, are we going to be more exposed with the sign up, saying that you can't come in with a gun, but a catastrophic event still happens, someone still comes through, or and protected theoretically by 2052, or I'm sorry, with the sign down, or the sign up, and we're under the exemption? Does either one of those, in your opinion, leave us more exposed from a liability standpoint, understanding that they can pursue federal litigation if that's the way that they hope to go?
Boy, that's tough for me to say. I really can't say. I mean, you know, the counter argument, I suppose, would have to be, you know, in the situation, the first kind of situation you presented, take the signs down, or, you know, you've got the signs up, and a catastrophic, someone still breaches the door, as the chief, I think, said, you know, if someone's determined to get in here and cause havoc, then they may well be able to do that. The counter argument that conceal and carry would have prohibited that, well, I think that's a pretty tough thing to prove, and that'd be a really difficult lawsuit to win. You'd have to prove that someone with a conceal and carry permit would have been present and would have, you know, taking this person out. Maybe they can prove that case. And you know, I'm like I said, I'm purely speculating here. But that's just kind of my initial reaction.
But there's clearly not an obvious answer to that question, I
No.
think. Okay.
Just so you know, sir, I've taught courses on terrorism, domestic terrorism. I've also taught them on active shooter situations. There's just no way you can plan for it and say, yes, in this situation, this is what's going to happen, this is not. It's just, unfortunately, happens. It's too frequently these days, but it happens.
Absolutely.
One last thing I want to make clear, and I kind of got lost in the discussion. But my understanding of the statute is that if you go for the exemption, and you develop the security plan, that has to be in place. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's what it says.
All right. I thought that's what was being said. I just wanted to make sure.
Well, wait, no, that's not what was being, so the security plan, okay, I'm confused, this is where this really comes
Okay.
down to. If we file for the exemption, January 1st it begins, what has to be in place January 1st? The metal detectors, the alternatives,
No.
or are we saying that we're exempting ourselves, we're going to continue to operate as we do today, until year 4, we will have this stuff in place?
All it says basically is what we will continue to operate the way that we are, and we have 4 years to develop and try to resolve what this issue is about whether or not we, A, will have those measures in place, or B, come up with some other type of adequate security measures that might be able to be in place. It just basically gives us another 4 years to try to go through and find money, budget money, do whatever the case may be. Because again, my counterparts say we're hoping the state comes back and cleans this up.
So it's in essence the same as a 6-month extension for another
Correct.
4 years?
Yes.
Are we 100% sure of that?
That's not the way I read it.
Yeah, I
Me
guess
neither.
that,
The way I
we really
understand it
need
is,
an answer on that.
and the way it reads, a security plan has been developed for the building being exempted, which supplies adequate security to the occupants in the building and merits the prohibition of carrying of a concealed handgun as authorized by the Personnel and Family Protection Act. The way I read that is, at the time that we submit the letter, we have a plan.
We have a
that
security plan
will
in
be
place. Yes.
So that's not what's happening today, because we don't actively have a security plan. So that will be created, and that will be part of our submission to the state.
Correct.
And then that plan
Correct.
will be able to be put into place on January 1st. That's the way I understand it.
Yes, and what I mean by, in the sense that, yes, we'll operate the way that we have, it's just that we will continue to operate along the lines that we have today, except we will have a security plan on file that has been developed and has been worked to file with the Attorney General. And that's just giving us 4 more years to try to figure out where we want to be on this.
Yeah, but I think what Councilmember Freeman is saying is that we have to have that plan in place.
That's correct.
Do we have that plan?
Okay, so the plan,
I mean, I've heard two different
plan is
things.
paper. Okay, you have a plan, and you're gonna work for the next 4 years toward whatever, versus something tangible that says on January 1st, 2014. I mean, why file for the exemption if we're gonna do, I guess that's the
here,
part,
let me-
I don't understand what are we exempting ourselves from?
From what I have been told and what I've been led to believe, what that 4-year exemption is allows the cities who want to get in adequate security measures the opportunity to try to budget, plan, and get something in place. Because they did recognize, they being the state of Kansas, recognized what a financial burden this places on most municipalities. So they're saying, we're giving you another 4 years to figure out how you might address this issue, how you're going to address the problem.
And, I mean, that makes sense to me because, again, why have an exemption if you really have to either do one or the other anyhow? I mean, if the security plan is you have to have metal detectors or what have you.
That's
No, but that's not
what
no.
it is. The plan is different from the security measures
That's
that have to
correct.
be in place at the end of the exemption.
That's why early on, I said, don't get the two mixed
The security measures are the metal
up.
detectors and the different
Okay.
layers.
So,
And I understood
again,
the same way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the plan for those costs. Those $90,000 are hard to place on a city in a 2014 budget if we don't exempt ourselves. But the
That's
4 years
correct.
allows us to build that into a budget at the end of that 4-year exemption.
That's correct.
And I think the chief has already spoken to what the security plan would include,
Right.
which would be ballistic glass at all the open access areas in the atrium area, panic buttons underneath the counters, safety training, active shooter training, and, for the staff,
I
so.
apologize if I confused you, but that is confusing to people. They're going, wait a minute, you have adequate security measures, you're talking about that, and you're talking about security plan, aren't you talking about one and the same thing? No.
No.
Okay.
They're separate.
Thank you.
So